Welcome, everybody, to the second day of the second International Conference of the Jean Monnet Center of Excellence fEUture, devoted to the future of Europe here at eCampus University. As is coherent with the online nature of our university, the meetings are streamed and are online and can be seen also later on the website and social media of Euractiv Italy, which is our media partner. So, this morning, the structure of today's conference, we have a first session today where we will have the speech by Professor Sabrina Bonomi. She's professor of economics here at eCampus University, and she will speak about digital transformation and sustainability, which so she will delve into in fact, two of the main priorities of the Conference on the Future of Europe, which had both the issue of the environment and the issue of the digital transformation as their priorities, how this impact on enterprises here in Europe. Then we'll have a joint session together with the University of Bologna, EU as a Global Actor Conference that is devoted to security and defense, which is again one of the priority of the Conference on the Future of Europe. And then we'll have another session here alone at 5, where we'll discuss about again digital transition with the Professor Antonella Galletti of Core University, and between strategic autonomy and the issue of defense, again with Professor Francisco Pereira Coutinho of the Universidade Nova de Lisboa, so that you have a framework of today's work and plan. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Professor Sabrina Bonomi of eCampus University, and she will speak about digital transformation and sustainability. Sabrina, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Roberto. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for this invitation. I share my presentation. I'm sorry. Okay. Digital transformation and sustainability. I'll speak about this economic scenario that it isn't the best that we could hope. And when the economy started at its origins, it was really interested to the commons, because oikos nomos, that is the origin of the name, means that we look at the house, but not the house of a person, but the common home, and so the planet. But in this period, we can see that we are running all day long. We have a lot of connection with a lot of people, but we are really not in a relationship with them. The planet is suffering, and if we add some events like pandemic or the war, we can easily understand that in this period we are not interested in common good. And this economic development without any attention to the consequences in the long term show us the limit. And especially if we look at the distribution of the rich. For example, we have a big inequality because the poorest 50% of the population holds only the 2% of the total wealth. And deterioration of natural environment is evident because the Earth overshoot day is moved forward each year. The last year was in August the 1st. This year was in July 2024. So we are looking at the tragedy of commons, because if we don't care about protecting them, they will no longer able to provide the resources to us. So the third element of attention is the paradox of happiness. Österling told us about this paradox 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and we didn't do anything to change this scenario. And also in the latest years, the Americans, for example, are worse of finding respect the, for 40 years ago. And we also in Europe are wealthier on average, of course, but not happier. And this is a big problem. So a lot of Nobel Prizes, for example, Muhammad Yunus and Eleanor Ostrom, who was the first women of the women to win this prize, told us that we need another view on economic scenario. We need to change our paradigm, because the neoclassic view offers no solution to these economic problems. So we must find in people, in humans, a new motivational structure to change this scenario. And Eleanor Ostrom told us that to fight the tragedy of commons, we need to learn from the small traditional communities, because if a community is small and people is in good relationships, they understand that the value of commons is important, and they put in action a self-regulation mechanism that change the situation. Because the good news is that all this problem has an a human-centered cause. So human cause the problem, human can resolve them. So we can put in action a sort of participative democracy in which all of organization can do something. So business organization, public organization, and non-profit organization, and also people in individual way. So new commons helped to the technology can change the situation and find again a collective right of use. This situation is called as sustainable development. Is a pact between a generation, because we must satisfy the needs of today's generation without compromising the possibility of future generation to meet their own. So if we look at the economic paradigm, thinking to the sustainable development, we change the way of looking at the world, and we put a particular attention to the interaction between economic, social, and environmental changes, because we need to find again the aspiration for a dignified life, combining economic development with the social inclusion and sustainability of the environment, as Sachs told us. So is necessary a systemic view in which everyone do something to change this scenario. In the United Nations, put as an important goal split in 17 sustainable development goals that we must achieve by 2030. Really, this process is not in a good situation, because each country is periodically evaluated, and we are looking that only a minority of these SDGs targets are currently on track. So more or less 30% show a progress to be achieved by 2030. And there are a lot of reasons for this situation. For example, conflicts and also the political instability. For example, the change of the president in USA completely forget this agenda and change the United States view. And you can perfectly understand that it isn't a little country that we can forget. And we have a big problem of this, but Europe continues to dominate this SDG ranking. So in Europe, we are showing that it is possible to be different, to think different. In particular, if we look at the North Europe situation, 19 of the 20 best performing countries on the world are European. For example, Finland, Sweden, and Denmark are the best performing at this moment. And I think that the European Union has a set of clear objectives on climate, and also on renewable energy, human rights. This is a big goal, because if we protect human, as Eleanor Ostrom told us, can find the motivation to achieve this goal, basic services, and a lot of other progresses. So in Europe, we are showing that the situation can change. But also Europe in this period has slowed his progress about SDGs. And I think that probably is following the trend of our other countries, from USA to Asia. But I think that it would be a mistake, a big mistake, because sustainability can be for Europe an element of identity, because it's a part, the attention to people, to community, to environmental are pivotal in our culture. In European culture, as I told you at the beginning, we started the logic of economy. The economy was born in Europe, and we, from the beginning, put a lot of attention to the common house, so the commons. In some areas, the progress is weak, very weak, or sometimes declining. For example, in biodiversity, in the protection of biodiversity, in the responsible consumption, and also on the climate policies. So I think that we can find again the attention to the sustainability because it could be a driver for the European economic identity, especially in business. Um, in, really, Europe made a lot of indication to help business in this change. For example, the European Green Deal, that is a strategic framework that guide policies and businesses toward the climate neutrality, and there are a lot of plans. For example, the circular economy action plan, and also the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainable Reporting Directive, that requires over 20,000 companies to report on their environmental, social, and governance impact. The big companies are obligated, the other, the small, no, but they are following because they belong to the supply chain of the big companies, so they need to report on their impact. So, especially the last introduction about the European Sustainability Reporting Standard, this SCRC, are aligned with the SDGs, and in this way, all the organizations are stimulated to contribute to the SDGs. The Europe explained also a taxonomy for sustainable activities, that is a system of classification that define which economic activity can be considered sustainable, and this is a big help to people and to enterprises in premise. So in Europe, we made also a sustainable finance strategy that mobilized the private capital to projects that are aligned with SDGs. And there are a lot of rules for banks, insurers, and investors to look at ESG, that means environment, social, and governance criteria. And also the corporate responsibility and due diligence policies. So these policies oblige large companies to assess and prevent negative impact of human rights and also to the environment along their supply chains, as I told you before. And last but not least, the support program and a lot of incentive to help the enterprises to innovate, digitalize their processes and their data, and to support the ecological transition. In Italy, we have a lot of small enterprises, but also in Europe, normally the enterprises are smaller than that of other countries. So we need a support in this sense. So the European Union does not limit itself to give some recommendation to enterprises and other organizations, but really encourage a company to integrate the SDGs in their strategies, to measure and communicate their impacts, and innovate through circular and digital approach, and attract sustainable investment. So in Europe, we are doing a lot of things to give hope to people and also to organizations. But enterprises must change their approach, not only because they have a rule or an indication but because they are really engaged in this way, because they understand that the opportunistic behavior and the short-term view is not an utility for their success. The success of an enterprise is the long-term life. So they need to change their view. And also they must show that value is more than profit. Profit is a tool to achieve other objectives, but the really goal of enterprises is not only profit, but the value that is profit more a lot of intangibles, for example, human rights and the protection of the planet. Second, we need the economy. This situation is a complex situation and we need a systematic view, but we need also to have a good relationship with other organizations, because no one is too big to fight the tragedy of commons alone. So we need an impact evaluation approach with measurement, evaluation, with a transformative logic and continuous improvement in the logic of triple sustainability, and also to become a learning organization, so flexible, but in continuous learning and teaching, also in the especially in technology, because technology is a tool that can accelerate, can be constitutive of this new approach. Because the company is not an institution that need to achieve only one task, the profit, but is a social institution for nature. Carol told us this 40, 50 years ago. And as a lot of entrepreneurs think, I cite Olivetti because it was the first that wrote this sentence, but a lot of entrepreneurs think this, because enterprises cannot look only at the profit index, but they must distribute wealth, culture, services, democracy. And Elkington told us that the bottom line is triple. We need economy, but we need also social and environmental sustainability. So we must look at the value of enterprises. Yes, their profit, but also the intangible capitals that they produce. So we need to look how profit is generated more than which amount of profit. And the second thing is that we must evaluate the positive impact on community and environment in the medium-large term of the enterprises. And not because we are good person or we are looking for a new solution, but because the 66% of consumers are willing to pay a premium to buy a sustainable brand. And this is a survey made by Nielsen 2 years ago, because the sustainable investment are exploiting. In the last year, more than 10%. And Generation Y and Z talent are now searching an enterprises with a sustainable logic to in which work. So it's very important to attract and protect the talents, to be sustainable. And also the small businesses and the sustainable companies have a competitive advantage and perform better than others. So we need this logic, eco-social, technical system, because we must change this approach to economy. Technology has a big role, can accelerate because provide a tool that facilitate teamwork, remote communication, and innovation. Also the sharing of information and so on. But also the technology can be also a tool that enabling this progress, because the development of social environmental innovation alternatives requires technological support in order to be recognized and legitimized. For example, for the impact, we must have documents, we must have a certification, and in this way we can find in technology a helpful tool, and also is able to generate innovation and new opportunity. For example, crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, the logic of boundaryless organization. We can remember how in the pandemic we find a lot of solution because we were connected. And then constitutive, because technology sometimes replaces highly impactful practices and improves social environment sustainability. For example, in the fashion industry, and I conclude, that is one of the most polluting sector. And also one of the largest manufacturing industry. We can study that the digital transformation process with the adoption of technologies change the processes from physical to digital. And in this case, the fashion industry appear able to realize the dream of a fashion that can cut the costs, but at the same time, the waste. And there are a lot of enterprises that produce digital fashion because people, especially influencers, for example, buy dresses to take a photo and then restitute them. So, or they and they spend a few money because we have a fast fashion industry, and then they throw on. In this case, they can make with technology the pictures with the dresses in digital fashion, and they don't sustain the waste, for example. And especially with the metaverse, there is a new way of expressing and experiencing fashion, with a dematerialization of the fashion industry that produces and dress for the avatar in which people recognize themselves and change and buy, for example, the big brand, reducing the negative impacts of the environment. So the digital transformation, for example, on fashion industry can make the fashion industry more sustainable because there is a production on demand. with the big data, we can produce only what is needed, for example, reducing the waste. With the digital twin and with virtual phototyping, or for example, the traceability and transparency, so we can protect also the human right on supply chain. For example, working condition that was a big problem in fashion industry. The sustainable e-commerce, because we optimize the logistic and the transportation, reducing the emission in atmosphere. And thanks to the metaverse, digital fashion become a new experience that Gen Z appreciate very much. And virtual fashion show that, for example, the showrooms and so on can be utilized, reduce international travel, and also to have circular business models and a new education program about this. So the company live if the community and the territory is improving and is protected. And we in Europe, we can really become the pivotal actor that can transform business network in an engine to sustain the sustainability transformation. So we must have a commons organization that look at commons as the first goal, and can change their routine, their capability to really change the paradigm, the economic paradigm. And so we need to change from a model in which all the organization all together fight the tragedy of commons, and European enterprises can change the market with their cultural identity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sabrina, for your very interesting speech and the ability to merge what was one of the priority regarding environmental sustainability, and also how the digital transformation, which was one of the other priority, can in fact impact the environmental sustainability and transition in a way that can help reach both goals at the same time. And also to put into broader perspective of the UN Agenda 2030, which is indeed a framework, a reference for the European Union legislation and policies. So we can open the floor, seeing if there are questions from the floor here or from the people connected. But in the meantime, while prepare a question, I wanted to ask you two questions. The first one is about the tools that the European Union is using to promote this double transition, the environmental one and the digital one. Because you mentioned a number of policies, including incentives and so on. But what about the resources? Because the European Union budget is very limited, 1% of GDP, compared to about 50% of GDP of the national budget. At the same time, it seems that most of the resources to create incentive for this transition are coming from the European Union budget. So these are a very small amount of money. So there was the Draghi report suggesting that to finance the transition, we would need 800 billions of investment, additional investment per year, of which about 20% from public money, so 160 billions, and the rest from private money, so from enterprises, investors, and so on. So this is really calling for the paradigm shift that you were advocating in your speech, because to have 640 billions extra investment per year it's a lot, really a lot from the private sector. It's indeed a lot of money. And so, how do you see this aspect, or how can we find the resources, and what are the discussion in the enterprise? Are you seeing this pattern? Because you mentioned that there was an increase in sustainable investment, and also that those companies are in fact performing better than average on the market. So it looks that there can be a market incentive to some degree to invest with this aim. So public finance and private financing, how do you see this in fitting in the framework you proposed?
I think three there are three point of in your question. The first, I don't think that entrepreneurs really need only contributors, but they need public policies that facilitate the development of the best that there is in entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs for nature are innovator, have a lot of ideas. And I think that if the public policies facilitate the development of their characteristic, they can really change the situation alone. They don't need to really contribute. This is my opinion. The second, I think that we must change the destination of European resources. Sometimes we use that resources. Yes, I know that they aren't infinite, but we use for goals that we don't really need, and that don't really change the perspective. And I think that the problem is that Europe is not as it was at the beginning. At the beginning, Europe was really convinced that sustainability was important, that we could make the difference. In this period, I think that we are not sure that this is the good way, because we see that other countries, other big countries, make different choices, and we are not so sure, so convinced to continues in our view. And this is the problem, because sustainability can be and should be the element of our identity, because I think that people can choose an enterprise that is more sustainable than other. And we must highlight continuously that in Europe we are different. Asia and United States make different choices, but we must convince of our. And I think that in this period, we probably we are afraid. I think that we are afraid to less our competitivity, and I think that this is a big mistake. The third is that, of course, we need a private investment because I think that this situation is complex, and when a problem is complex, we can't we can't have a simple solution. So I think that we need to merge private investment and public investments, but especially we must merge our innovation, our capabilities, our creativity also to solve this problem. And in this case, the technology is fundamental because we must be connected, we must innovate all together. This is a big problem. The tragedy of commons is a big problem, but we can fight this challenge altogether.
Thank you, Sabrina. Are there any questions for Sabrina from people connected or from the floor? While you were speaking, further thing came to my mind. Do you think that to enable the entrepreneur innovator, do we need some form of protection against competition that is not living to the same environmental standards? Because there is now this policy idea that is being debated about buy European and buy green in public procurement, for example. So that when you are having public procurement, you should only buy products that are respecting certain environmental standards and preferably being produced in Europe following those standards. So, for example, the renovation of the French train line should be made with green steel produced in Europe rather than cheaper steel produced in China with a much greater CO2 blueprint and also with very often subsidies from from the government, essentially. So there is this debate about a mixture of protectionism to one degree with buy European, but linked to environmental standard that needs to be higher than the rest of the world in Europe. Do you think that this kind of policies is what is needed to allow the entrepreneurs to be innovator and to invest into this green transition, or do you think that there is something else that the European Union should do? As at the moment, these are the two main issues that are discussed with reference to this point that you raised.
But I think that rules are important, and the protection is not a solution if we impose duties, for example, but it is if we impose rules that protect healthy behaviors from opportunistic ones. Because in Europe, we have a lot of rules to be sustainable, to look at human rights at work, to look at supply chain in food, to look to a lot of aspects that protect people. And I think that all over the world is not the same. So we need to pretend that our healthy behaviors are protected from opportunistic ones. I don't think that is a solution, but controls are a solution, and also a good communication, because I think that we must fight in this period, we must fight all the wrong narrative and highlight that is not the same. So I think that in this case, Europe must be more convinced to be credible if they are aren't convinced that they are not able to protect their enterprises.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. Come here because otherwise they cannot hear you. So we have a question from Professor Francisco Pereira Coutinho from the Universidade Nova de Lisboa. Oh,
Sorry,
yes.
this is
Just
just
so that.
sorry. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I was just listening to the debate, and I had this question which goes straight, I think, to the points you were just making. Of course, business and human rights, the regulation of new technologies, we have been setting the standards for the past few years, expecting others to follow us, and that happened in a lot of ways. But I do believe that happened because we were actually doing very good laws, very thoughtful laws, etc. But don't you think that we have very much reached some overreach? And I give you, for instance, the example of the AI Act, where we rushed to legislate, expecting others to follow us. And I was just recently in Brazil, and they want to follow this specific law when us ourselves are having second thoughts about that. And don't you think that our credibility may be at stake when we rush to legislate, as it seems it was specifically this case? And I'm not saying we shouldn't have it. It's probably we are under this digital revolution with AI. I think that's very clear. But we decided to go forward even before we had a very good idea on what to do. And what kind of impact do you think it would have in our standing in the world as a respected and a thoughtful legislator that sets standards that should be followed by everybody else, given that in international law, international relations these days doesn't seem to be lots of appetite to go forward with multilateral agreements. Yeah, just a few thoughts.
Yeah, I think that the problem is big and is not. I think that isn't a simple solution, but I think that Europe must be more united because we must reduce inequalities, not only in the richness, but also in the digital divide. We have a lot of inequalities, and I think that firstly, we must reduce them in Europe, and then we can also be more united to fight the inequality with other countries. I think that in this period, the difficulty for a lot of enterprises is that I think about the small enterprises or the enterprises that adopt healthy behaviors. I think that they are disoriented. They don't understand which is the direction that we want, because the laws and the rules must be done, but also applied. And in this period, we really don't understand which is the direction. I think that the uncertainty is the big problem because for enterprises, because if we have an uncertain scenario, we don't invest, we don't look at the longer term way. And I think that before we must be reinforced in Europe, and then we can look to the other countries.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabrina. So if there are no other questions, we can close this session. I would like to ask the Regia to put in the chat the link for the next section, which will be on Teams, as this is a joint session with the University of Bologna, so won't be here in Zoom. So if you can put it in the chat, so for the people it's easier to connect at 10, to copy paste it to connect at 10 with the second session that will be about the European defense, and will start in a few minutes. So thank you so much, Sabrina,
Thank you very
for
much.
your enlightening speech regarding a very topical issue that lies at the core of European policies today, and that merged two of the priorities of the Conference of the Future of Europe, on which citizens really focus with their proposal. And these are two of the priorities on which we had the most legislation in the last few years, because as you mentioned, with the Green Deal and Farm to Fork, and the AI Act, the Digital Service Act, Market Act, and so on, there has been a lot of legislation that was trying to provide a legislative follow-up to the proposal that came out of the Conference of the Future of Europe, showing some level of responsiveness of the European institution to the proposal coming from the citizen, especially in those two fields. So thank you so much, Sabrina.
Thank you.
In the chat, you will find the link to Teams for the next session at 10. And then we'll have the next session here on Zoom at 5 o'clock. In the program, there is the link for each session. And so the appointment here back on Zoom will be at 5. So thank you so much, and see you later at 10 at the joint section on European defense, and then at 5. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Roberto, for the invitation.